What's up, guys? Welcome to the podcast today. We have a young up-and-coming competitor with us today. She's getting ready to compete on the Polaris show. Polaris.
23.
Named after a star.
Polaris 23,
but
March 11th.
Right. And so it'll be what is it? It's going to eight woman Grand Prix.
66 kilogram Grand Prix. So yeah, single elimination, 10-minute rounds, 1 point for passing the guard, back takes.
We'll get into that in a minute. And any of you guys that are in America, if you have no idea what 66 kilograms is, just take that number and multiply it by 2.2, and there you go. So with that said, we're going to get into the podcast with her, talk about her start in training, how she went from training like all these other traditional martial arts over in Denver, and then she's ended up training with like Tom DeBlass over in New Jersey, and she's been competing and doing really well for herself. So cool story. And again, be sure to check out the Polaris show coming up. I believe that'll have it on Fight Pass.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think it's UFC Fight Pass. And I think they've done a lot. UFC Fight Pass thing's now going to have ADCC.
Yeah. So they've got the EBIs on there too.
It's really cool.
So it's funny because I actually have the Fight Pass, but I don't have it for like the fighting. I have it because like I can watch the EBIs and kind of watch some of the grappling events that they do because I like watching those. And so again, it's
very cool.
It's worth checking out.
And it's a big, I got the UFC kind of behind it, which is pretty cool.
So anyway, jumping into that, as always, thanks to our sponsors for helping make this podcast happen. Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web is a premier CBD company. They make gummies, tinctures, balms. They have the regular CBD products that you're familiar with. They also have CBD products that are, I guess you'd say, geared towards people that might have to be tested for different substances. And so if that's something that you're concerned about, they have you there as well with their, it's called the Daily Sports Edge products. So you can check that out as well. But again, they've been a sponsor for a long time, and Eugene and I have used their products on and off for any given time for a long period of time. And again, a lot of people experience different results from CBD. Some people say that it helps them with having a sort of a calm sense of focus. Some people say it tends to help support their sleep cycles. Some people say it helps with like inflammation related to working out, things like that. What I encourage you to do is if CBD is something that you're interested in, you've heard about it before, you're like, man, I'd like to kind of try it out. Well, then do so and save yourself some money. Go to Charlotte's Web's website, charlottesweb.com, and then use the promo code JiuJitsu, CHEWJITSU, for 20% off the order. JiuJitsu 20% off the order. And again, you can use it on whatever products that you find interesting there. And then again, my encouragement with it, if you're going to try it for like a month. Like give it time to get into your system. Try it for a month. See what kind of effects it has on you. If you notice that it's helping you in a good way, great. If not, no big deal. Again, some people tend to like, I know Eugene, you like yours in the morning.
I'll do sometimes in the morning. Sometimes I'll do it at night. Like I like the gummies at night, but I will take like the tincture in the morning after I eat a little food.
Yep. So like a lot of people take them in the morning because they feel like it helps them kind of like say level like throughout the day, right? Like when you got everything, everything coming at you, kind of helps you kind of keep a calm sense of focus when things are happening. And then a lot of people tend to find it useful at night when it's time to wind down for the evening. And so try it out for yourself, play around with the dosages and as well as the timing that you want to do and go from there. Also, thanks to Epic Roll for helping make this podcast happen. If you guys are interested in getting some high quality jiu-jitsu gear with cool designs, whether you're looking for gis, rash guards, shorts, t-shirts, whatever it might be, check them out at epicrollbjj.com. For longtime listeners, you know that I'm a big fan of his shorts. Most of the time when you see me in like rolling or training or whatever, competing, it's probably in the Epic Roll shorts. I like them because they don't have Velcro. So if you ever had like an MMA short where it has the Velcro, some companies are starting to do the Velcro okay, but I don't like the Velcro because it tends to, it's like the Velcro wears out over time, which I don't like, because then you have a pair of shorts that are like basically okay, but you have this old worn out Velcro. And on top of that, sometimes like I feel like the Velcro kind of bunches up under my stomach.
Yeah, I can kind of like abrasive a little
bit.
It's
just weird. It's like, and again, these are like these. I'm like nitpicking here, but again, I like having that like basically that kind of elastic band that goes around with like the shorts. They just tie up the little rope in the back or the little cord, and then there's no pockets or anything, and then it's just like a pair of grappling shorts that are super loose, flexible, and I like them. And we'll be trying some stuff. I can't say anything about it yet because it's not for sure, but we'll be working on a possible new product in the near future. And I'll also have some new Jiu-Jitsu stuff coming out probably in the next few months from Epic Roll. So more details on that to come. But in the meantime, go to their website at epicrollbjj.com. Check out the selection of stuff that they have. And again, if you want to buy something, save some money in the process, and support the podcast by using the promo code Chewjitsu, CHEWJITSU, for 15% off the order. And whether you're a bearded guy like me, got some facial fuzz, or if you're a guy that just has hair in other places that you want to trim down, check out Manscaped. Manscaped is the premier men's grooming company. We used to say premier below the belt grooming company. I sort of say they're the premier men's grooming company because they make everything from, I mean, anything that you would possibly need as a man for your grooming needs. They just came out with a beard trimmer. I think they call it the beard hedger. And so I'm going to be trying that sucker out soon. I'll let you guys know the results of it. But it has an adjustable little thing where you can sort of move it up and down. And that's a really descriptive, Chewy, an adjustable thing. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Adjustable guard.
You have an adjustable guard.
You're
right. But what I mean is but it's fixed on there, and then you can move it up and down.
Yeah, you kind of have this little dial, and we just got them in. I haven't even tried them out yet, but they're cool. They have beard balm, beard oil. They have little scissors.
Well,
all kinds of stuff.
the little. So as a guy that trims his beard, if I have to trim it, I either have to be very particular with the trimmer to make sure I don't trim it too much or too little. But also when I had a trimmer where it had the big guards, and you'd have to switch the guards out for different parts. Whereas, if it's just adjustable, that's kind of a nice little thing to be very quick.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get to know your length, you can just trim your beard down really quickly, by just knowing the guard level. So anyway, a lot of cool products for men who want to step up their grooming game. If you guys want to check them out, go to their website at manscape.com. The promo code on for the podcast to save some money for you guys is Chewjitsu20. And that'll give you 20% off the order, and you'll also get free shipping on whatever you order. So whether you order their trimmers, their soaps, their balms, their colognes, whatever it might be, you'll get 20% off of it and free shipping. Also, guys, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/the-Chewjitsu-podcast, along with a special bonus that we give you guys upon signing up, which will give you a mobility routine Eugene put together. It takes about 20 minutes to complete, and a Ghee and Nogi seminar that I recorded a number of years ago. Along with those two bonuses, you'll get access to a lot of exclusive content that we put together for the last, what has it been, 5-6 years now?
5 years, 4 or 5 years. I think
it's been a long time.
Yeah.
That we've put together for the podcast. And this includes little snippets of basically every person that's been interviewed on the podcast. There is a tangible jiu-jitsu training tip, as well as some random things that we get into. You'll obviously have podcast extras. And then there's also some things like rolling videos and things of that nature included in there as well. And you get any and all of it by joining the Patreon. So you can check that out again at patreon.com/the-Jiu-Jitsu-podcast. And last but not least, guys, if you want to get access to 3 free ebooks and get my daily email newsletter, you go to my website at chewjitsu.net/join. The 3 free ebooks, there's one on developing your own game plan. One is for jiu-jitsu. There's one that goes into the ideas of drilling and how to break plateaus using them. And then there's one more that goes into at-home studying and training and ideas. And that one was originally made for people during quarantine and the lockdown stuff. And you get all 3 of those for joining my email newsletter, which you'll get a daily email. And just to give you guys a heads up, if you do decide that you want one of those ebooks, just make sure you get it soon, because at the time of recording this in January of 2023, in a few months, that'll be gone. I'm doing something a little different with my website. So if you guys want it, make sure you go and get it soon. But guys, with that said, let's get into the conversation with Jaidyn and talk jiu-jitsu, talk about her competition and her start in jiu-jitsu and how she's doing at this point. So I'm curious, it's like every generation that I'm watching get into jiu-jitsu. I'm always curious, what attracted you to getting into jiu-jitsu?
Well, I started martial arts when I was really young. I started doing taekwondo when I was 4. And then I just kind of progressed throughout the martial arts from there. So I did taekwondo, and then I got into karate right after that. And I was in karate for a really long time. I'm actually a 4th degree black belt in Kempo.
Okay. The jiu-jitsu people were like a fourth degree black belt.
Is Kempo like, is that one of those like we actually there's some contact? Like do you contact sparring and stuff?
Yeah, so I would do like point sparring, continuous sparring. I placed in the States multiple times in karate.
That's very cool.
And my coach there was really big into MMA. And so that's kind of how I started getting into like jiu-jitsu and that kind of stuff. So I started doing jiu-jitsu when I was 11, I believe.
How old are you now?
I'm 21.
Okay.
Huh.
So
you started when you're 11. God, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's been a ride. So I've been doing jiu-jitsu for about 10 years. And I also did some striking, some wrestling, some judo. But ultimately my love was for jiu-jitsu. So I went into that full time and haven't looked back.
Did you like do like any traditional sports, like, soccer, basketball, anything like that? Is there anything like that you saw, or was there any interest, or what was like the really interest in the martial arts that for you that was so much more kind of like attractive?
I did do some stuff when I was little, like when I was still in my taekwondo phase, I was doing soccer and softball and all that type of stuff, just like the basic sports that kids do, gymnastics. And I don't know, just something really sparked when I started taekwondo and when I just started doing martial arts in general. I think I really liked the discipline aspect. I think it was something that really intrigued my interest. And that was one thing that really separated it from, soccer or anything like that. I felt like the discipline in that wasn't the same. And so I think that was probably the big thing.
Okay. And here's something I'm curious about. So I got into like, I did Taekwondo as a kid as well. And I got into it because I was a kid that grew up in the 90s watching old 80s martial arts movies like Bloodsport and Kickboxer and all this stuff and Karate Kid. So that's what I wanted to do. I was like, okay, this is what I got to do. Which led a lot of people of my generation. We all got into karate or, stuff like that because of those movies. What got you into doing martial arts? Just so we understand you kind of led to jiu-jitsu that way through martial arts, but what got you into doing taekwondo and karate in the first place? Do you remember that? Like what made you want to start doing it?
I remember my parents always watching like the UFC events and stuff when they were on when I was little, and I would always go downstairs and I would like see them on TV and think like, wow, that's really cool. Like, and I was just always like really inspired by that. And I think that kind of just led me down that path. And especially once my like karate coach and I started getting bored with taekwondo, and I went into karate, my karate coach, he was very big into the MMA scene, and he was doing interviews for, magazines and websites and stuff like that. So when I saw like all he was doing for it and how into like MMA he was, I think that's when like my interest really peaked for a more challenging like martial art per se.
Okay. And then and this is just me, I always get interested in how people get to where they are because I find it fascinating. So when you got into, you spent some time doing the traditional stuff like karate and striking stuff with karate and taekwondo. When did you start to, like, you started doing jiu-jitsu? When did you have that point where you were like, this is actually what I want to do? And I asked this because I started doing jiu-jitsu primarily because I wanted to fight mixed martial arts. I wrestled, I wanted to fight, and that's what I thought I did. And then, I started fighting MMA and I was doing it, but then I was like, man, I really just love doing jiu-jitsu the most, right? Like I like grappling more than everything else. When did you kind of find that point, at least so far, where you're like, okay, I want to go all in on this jiu-jitsu stuff? When did that start to happen?
So yeah, my original goal was to actually do MMA. And when I was in karate, I remember kind of like the turning point when I decided like I want to start doing like more striking and jiu-jitsu and stuff like that was actually when I went to like one of the UFC press conferences that was in town. And I ended up like asking a question when they opened it up to the audience to Rampage Jackson. And Dana White thought it was really cool that like a kid was watching the UFC. And he ended up like giving me and my group that I was with, because we went to this event with like 15 other kids from my karate school. He ended up giving us like 15 free tickets to the event in his like personal seats.
Oh, wow.
And it was like the coolest experience ever. And I just remember being like so inspired by that. And I had already wanted to be like doing MMA and be in the UFC and stuff like that. But that opened a whole new door of like love for it at that point. And so I think after that was when I kind of hopped into like jiu-jitsu, and I was just kind of using that as a way to get into MMA more.
Yeah.
And eventually I started doing striking. And I found a really big love for striking at the time. I actually used to like striking more than I liked jiu-jitsu. Okay. And that was kind of like where I was comfortable. And I started training at the time I lived in Denver too, because I grew up there. And so I started training at Factory X in Denver. And so I was on the fight team there with a lot of the guys that are in the UFC and Bellator. And I had a lot of like the same expectations. So I was training like as if I was going to be, you know, an MMA fighter.
Right.
And at the time I was only like, 14, 15, and you couldn't do MMA until you were 18 in Denver. So I was like at a point where I was like, okay, like I could fight, like I'm ready to fight, but like I can't do anything yet. And that's when actually Fight to Win started doing their big events. Was right around that time. And so I saw them do that and I was like, wow, this is a good little like kind of substitute for MMA until I can actually like get in a cage, because it's like the same type of setup. It was like one of the first big like super fights that were around me. And so I started doing those. And after doing a few of those, I was like, wow, like I just really like this jiu-jitsu thing. And my love for striking was just kind of starting to dwindle. And then eventually I was like, you know what? I just want to go all in on jiu-jitsu. And that's what I did.
What about like, do you remember your first day on the mats? Like what it was like? I mean, probably mostly men were there. Did you do like kids class? Did you do like adult class? What was that like for you, and kind of getting comfortable being like in jiu-jitsu just as a first time?
Yeah, it's funny. I remember my first class at like a real jiu-jitsu gym. And I got on the mats and I was in the kids class. And I was at that point, kind of on that verge of being in the adult program, because I was just almost bigger than everybody. And there was only a couple of kids that were my size. And there was this girl that was on the mats and she absolutely killed me. And I was like, wow, this is like, I need to be training like this. Like I really liked that feeling of having somebody just kill me, but also me wanting to like come back and kill her, and it kind of gave me something to like chase. And I remember just loving that so much.
I think that's kind of the response that maybe you have to have, right? Because, I had the same thing. I came in as a wrestler going into jiu-jitsu and I thought, okay, I'm going to probably be like a blue belt here. That's what I'm going to probably be doing. And then I got there and like, I got smashed by everyone, including the smallest guy in class. And I was like, oh, I need to learn how to do some of this voodoo. This is great stuff, right? Like this guy like tooled me and he was like 130 pounds. I couldn't do anything. But then, it's interesting as a coach, and I'm sure from being in the gym, you see the same thing where you watch people come in and you watch people like you that have that response to say, okay, I got trashed. I want to learn how to do this. And then you have other people that like, for whatever reason, they like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yes, absolutely. It's, it's really interesting. That's one thing that I really like, because I teach the kids classes a lot.
Very cool.
And so that's one thing I really like, is to be able to watch the kids progress and like see the kids that do come in first and they just are like so timid and so scared, and like they're getting killed by some of the more experienced kids. And as time goes on, they start to become the hammer and less of the nail. And it's really fun to see. It's really cool to watch like their progress in jiu-jitsu and their confidence build. And like, it's just one of my favorite things about coaching.
When did that happen for you? Can you remember the experience where you kind of started being able to kind of hold your own and actually be successful on the mats on a consistent basis? And then that kind of leads into my next question is like, are you doing jiu-jitsu full time now?
Yeah. So I am full-time jiu-jitsu. And then I coach as well. So
yeah,
if I'm not training, I'm coaching. If I'm not doing either of those, I'm lifting. So it's kind of just my
so that whole lifestyle change, like, can you talk about like actually that experience of developing your game and actually learning and then becoming, a visually kind of feeling and seeing, like becoming better grappler on the mats, and then also like deciding this is what I want to do full time. Like, I think, maybe this MMA thing's interesting, but this is where I feel like my life needs to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So like even when I was a kid, like I always knew like martial arts of some sort was going to be my path. People would ask me when I was like 11 years old, people would be like, well, what's your backup plan if like this MMA thing doesn't work out? And I was always like, I don't have a backup plan. Like that's not even an option for me. And I've always had that mentality of like, there is no backup plan. And like, I've always just been all in. And I think once I did start to like shift into just wanting to do jujitsu more, I kind of like started thinking, well, how do I make this a full-time thing? With MMA, it was very like, oh, I can just, at the time at least, the big competitions were like the Worlds and obviously ADCC, but also just like Fight to Wins. And so I was like, okay, like how do I make this a full-time thing? And, I knew eventually I wanted to open a school and open a gym and be able to coach competitors and stuff like that. But I also started really getting into like, oh, I want to compete in ADCC and I want to do this and I want to do that and I want to do all the Fight to Wins I can. And one of the things that really actually kind of jump-started me into being able to make this like my full-time thing was like basically right after I graduated high school, Seth from Fight to Win asked me to come be on the crew and work for him. And I thought that was like the coolest thing. And so I got to, immediately after high school, I basically started going on the road with them and touring. And, I worked every show. I competed like 15 times for them. And it was just a really cool experience to be able to not only travel and like, just have those experiences, but to be able to get paid to, be around jiu-jitsu all the time. And I just loved that. And so that was one of those things that like really made me like, yeah, like this is, I always knew, but like that kind of just secured it and solidified it. And then when I got to work, the first ADCC that Seth produced in 2019, I remember I was scorekeeping and I was on the middle mat and I was just watching all the matches like all day straight through. And I was just so inspired. I felt the energy in the room and the crowd and being able to see like all the behind the scenes stuff from the athletes. And it was just like one of the coolest experiences ever. And at that moment, I was absolutely like, yeah, like we're taking this like really seriously and we're going to 100% do this.
Yeah, being at those events, that energy is different. You'll leave there like even if you're like a regular hobbyist or something, if you go to an ADCC or a Fight to Win or even any big event where there's some good energy, you'll leave motivated to want to go train more.
Absolutely. And that was one of the cool things about Fight to Win too, is I got to see like a lot of people would message me and just be like, hey, like I was so inspired from like your match at Fight to Win, or I was so inspired from like the show and I'm training more, or I got my friend to train because of the show. And like, that was really cool to be able to see people like want to train because of stuff like that I was involved in.
Yeah, and it's cool that you were able to experience, like there's something like I've read about and experienced myself, which is like, we all have this dream of sometimes doing something that we love doing and somehow getting paid for it. And we don't know how that's sometimes going to look because like a lot of times there's not a roadmap for certain things. And like you can read about everyone from like, I mean, like even guys like Walt Disney, he got paid like, it was like a minuscule amount of money, just a few bucks back in the day to make a drawing. And he made the drawings like, I just got paid to draw. Like, oh, like, so that's what I'm going to do now. Like it like breaks the seal. And the fact that you got that when you were in high school, like I got paid to like go do jiu-jitsu stuff. Like it gets your mind to think differently. Cause then all of a sudden it's like, it's possible. Right.
Yes.
And so it's cool that you were able to get that experience early. I'm curious, cause you said you teach kids. Were you nervous when you had to teach kids for the first time? Like by yourself as the head coach or whatever, or do you assist?
I wasn't too nervous. I started off being like an assistant coach.
All right.
And I actually went through like a training program for being able to coach kids. Like when I was at my karate school,
cool.
They did a really cool thing where they would like pick out some of the kids that they thought would be good for coaching and would have them like assistant coach. And so there was like a class we would go through and we'd go over just like different strategies to teach and how to handle different kids and stuff like that. So I've been helping out in kids classes since I was like 11.
Since you were a kid.
Yeah, exactly. So I would always help like the little kids. And so when I finally got that freedom to be able to teach my own class, it was definitely a little bit like intimidating because it's like, wow, like now it's all on me. But I also felt very confident and very comfortable. And I knew I was, I knew I had the experience and the knowledge to be able to do that.
That's cool. And now you're training up there with Tom, right?
Yeah.
So how did that come about? Because I didn't realize you were from Denver. So you're over in Denver, and then you're on the Jiu-Jitsu road show and doing all that stuff with Seth. How did you end up at in New Jersey?
So it's kind of a crazy story. Like right before COVID, I had a match on Fight to Win, and it was a title match. And I ended up losing, and I was not very happy about the way that I lost, and I got submitted by a heel hook, and I just felt like I shouldn't have, I made some stupid mistakes and I shouldn't have done that. And it just kind of made me start to reevaluate things a little bit. Like I was like, okay, if I really want to do this full time, like, am I in the right place? Like, should I be doing things different? And it was kind of like a wake up call for me. And at that point, I was just kind of like, let's see what else is out there. I'm not tied down to Denver. I don't really like, my family lived out there, but like, I don't really have anything else there. Like I can go anywhere. And so I just kind of started picking out like gyms that I was interested in, people that I was interested in learning from. Because I do feel like in order to be the best, you need somebody that's able to guide you, that has been there and done the things that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there was obviously a few places that I was like, okay, I would be interested in like trying out this gym or that gym. And I ended up getting in contact with Tom and just kind of talking to him about my situation. And, I told him that I wanted to come down and train for a week and kind of just see what I thought. And then eventually, move down there if I liked it and everything went smooth. And so that's pretty much what I did. I came down for a week, like right after quarantine was over. I trained for a week and I was, incredibly nervous because going into it too, I was not a half guard player at all.
Okay.
I had no half guard. And I was so nervous to go train with basically like the king of half guard. Like I was like, oh my God, like what? And so I remember my first day, like he had me get to the gym early. We had some rolls. He put me to half guard and I just froze. And I was like, oh my God, he probably thinks I'm terrible. I'm awful. I was like freaking out. But the gym was super welcoming. Everybody was great. Tom was great. It was a really interesting environment because it felt like the energy you would get in like an MMA gym or like a wrestling room. And it had that physicality, which I really liked because I am a very physical competitor. But it had the technique of, it had world-class technique.
Sure.
And so I found that mix to be something that is very, very hard to find. And especially with like such a family feel. And I didn't even have to look at any other gyms. I remember after my first day of training, I walked out of there and I was like, I'm moving here.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so I packed up my stuff and like a week or a month later, I moved.
What was Tom like as a coach? There's something, I mean, obviously you didn't have a half guard game. So maybe talk to us about what your game was like. And then, what Tom is like as a coach and developing. I guess I assume your half guard is probably pretty good now.
Yes.
So what was that process like, working with him and just learning?
At first it was a lot of adjustment. Obviously anytime you do start to work with a new coach or anything, you have to take a couple days to get used to like their teaching style and stuff like that. And Tom, I was very, very intimidated at first. I remember my first class, he lined us all up and he gave a speech about how you have to like grab someone's heart and like pull it out of their chest and then like eat it. And I was just so nervous. I was like, what is going on right now? But it also had like this way to like really pump you up for class. And you were like,
Sure.
Oh yeah, like I'm ready for this. And so, it was definitely like, it was an adjustment coming from, a gym that was much more like relaxed. But, we kind of stripped everything down and we slowly built things up again. And so going into it, I was, I had a decent closed guard. and I had like a decent back control. And that was about it. I tried to play leg locks, but I was just not good at leg locks. So that didn't end well. And so we kind of like stripped everything down and just like rebuilt it. And we focused a lot on my half guard. And over the course of, a year, I went from having no half guard to having a really, really good half guard. And now it's gone from me not knowing how to do like literally anything in the half guard to me basically feeling the most comfortable in half guard out of any other spot.
And how tall are you?
I'm 5'7".
Okay. So I was just thinking, like,
It's fairly tall.
Huh?
It's fairly tall.
It's very tall. Yeah. I was just curious. I was like, because I know like sometimes if I go up against like some like especially big guys at heavyweight, like my little legs are not going to like lock. I mean, my legs just don't lock around there. They're thick or whatever. I don't skip leg day, so I can't get a good lock. So like half guard's what I got to go to. Sort of a random question, since we're getting into the jiu-jitsu stuff more and more, but I wanted to ask before we get past it, do you ever think that you'll compete in MMA at some point, or do you think that's like, it's not for me right now, at least in your thoughts currently?
As of right now, I'm not super interested in it. Maybe at some point in the future.
Sure.
But I want to focus on jiu-jitsu. I want to win what I want to win in jiu-jitsu, and then, reevaluate.
What do you want to win? Like, what's the goal? Obviously, I mean, there's a couple. You've been around Fight to Wins. You've won some stuff there. You've been at the ADCCs. You kind of, what's the goal for you?
I definitely want to win ADCC. That's, one of the ultimate goals. Obviously that's like the most prestigious thing you can win.
Sure.
So that's definitely there. I want to win, the world's at black belt multiple times. I want to just win anything and everything, to be quite honest with you.
That's good. No, I mean, that's the way you have to be. And I think like, now you're training full time. Like, and I always like to ask this question. To me, jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu. And when I started, I started primarily in the Ghee, and I've transitioned a lot more to Nogi. But like when you started, did you do a lot of Ghee, or like now, how's your split? And do you still like to train in the Ghee and things like that?
So it is really interesting because I was like both a Ghee and no-Gi player for a long time. I would pretty much equally train both. And when I was in Denver, at least. And then once I moved to New Jersey, I started doing less and less of the Ghee. All of Tom's classes are in no-Gi. So I was doing no-Gi, 5 days a week. And then I would train in the Ghee like once a week when I first got here, just to kind of have a chill like day where I was training, but also like kind of recovering because it wasn't as like physical as no-Gi. But then eventually I just kind of switched to all no-Gi. And I don't think I put on a Ghee for maybe like a year and a half. Okay. And then actually after this Worlds, Tom decided we were going to start training in the Ghee. So we did like 3 weeks of just all Ghee, just to kind of recover and just to switch things up and kind of, change things. And so we did Ghee for a few weeks, and it was a lot of fun, but I was definitely excited to get back to no-Gi again. So now we're back and I am happy.
That first day of putting the Ghee back on is always such a pain in the butt, especially if you go against one of your friends or training partners that has like a good Ghee game.
Yes.
Like after No-Gi Worlds, I hadn't trained in the Ghee for a couple months. I mean, I trained like 1 day a week a couple times, but then like the last 8 weeks of training, I trained only no-Gi the whole time. And then I remember my first week back after I took a week off, and then I came back to training. I remember my buddy, he's got such a good spider lasso game, and I'm just getting stuck in, you're just stuck in the grips, and you're like, I don't like this anymore, and it's just definitely a different game, and the grip fighting is so much more important because you can't use, like you said, it's not as physical. There's not as much athleticism. You can't slide through things. It's a pain. Here's a question to you going to the training stuff. What does your training schedule kind of look like? And again, they can always have variances to it, but what does your training schedule generally look like currently when you're getting ready for a competition? And then afterwards, what does your training schedule look like if you're not getting ready for a competition?
So my training schedule looks pretty much the same, whether I'm getting ready for a competition or not. It's more so like the intensity that changes. So right now I'm doing no-Gi Sunday through Thursday. And then I'm also lifting like 3 days a week, and I'm doing cardio like 1 or 2 days a week. And I'm also doing like mobility work,
Mm-hmm.
like 1 or 2 days a week right now.
Mm.
So my schedule's pretty packed. And a lot of my training is at night. So I kind of get the day to, the day to myself, which is nice. But on my lifting days and stuff, I do my lifting and my cardio during the day.
Mm.
What kind of strength training do you follow anything in particular, or do you have a guy that writes it for you or whatever, or do you just put something together yourself?
Yeah, I have a strength and conditioning coach. So I work with him, like 4 days a week.
Cool. Very good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you do, like, as far as, one of the things you talked about, strength conditioning is really, really important, obviously. And you're 21, so like your body can kind of bounce back so quickly. You can train. Do you train multiple times a day or just like once a day?
Just once a day.
Once a day. So like, what do you do? You said some mobility work. Like, what do you like to do for recovery, for like body maintenance, just to keep your body feeling healthy and together?
I go to the chiropractor weekly. I find that's probably the most important thing. That's what makes me feel the best. I try to get massages like at least once every couple of months, just, to stay loose. And then the mobility stuff helps me a lot too. It kind of just keeps my body feeling good, not as tense. And that's more of like an active recovery too, which is nice. So I would say those are probably my main things.
And so here's something for you. So I'm curious because like when I was younger and I went into training, like for the most part, I was training full time. Like I don't know what the situation is for the younger crowd now. When I first got into it, like it was like me and buddies would like either we would split a house or we would split an apartment or whatever, and everybody had to kind of like bunch up because it's like you have to live kind of when you're a young competitor and stuff like that, you have to kind of have a Spartan like lifestyle, at least that we used to anyway back in the day. And so I'm curious, because if your parents are back in like Jersey and stuff, what do you do now for like taking care of the bills, so to speak, making money or like that kind of stuff, currently as a part-time coach and full-time competitor?
So right now it's actually really nice. At first I did have an apartment with my friend Cam. My friend Cameron Malott, he moved out here with me from Denver. And we just decided to tackle this together. So me and him had an apartment for like a year. And actually before we had an apartment, we moved in with Gary Tonon's parents. They let us move in with them.
That's cool.
And so we lived there for like 6 months, and that was really great. They're the best. And they were so welcoming, and it was awesome getting to live there. And after we lived there, we hopped to the apartment, and after being out here for about like a year and a half, my mom actually decided to move out here with me.
Oh, cool.
Very awesome.
So now me and my mom have a house, and I just live with her. So it's nice. It's not stressful. It's just a great environment, and I don't really have to worry about too much. And it's a really helpful thing to have her here.
Yeah, no, that's huge because now you can focus on what the goal is, what the mission is, for jiu-jitsu and for competing and stuff like that. That's awesome. That's super cool.
Yeah.
What did she like? What was because I mean I think of Denver as kind of like a nice place. I mean it's kind of super expensive, but it seems like a nice place.
Well, New Jersey's probably expensive too.
Well, I mean in comparison, I mean like
they are both.
I think New Jersey's probably better than Denver. At least maybe the real estate prices. I don't know.
Yeah, the real estate here is definitely cheaper than in Denver.
It is.
Yeah, bro. When we were out,
I remember
when we were out in Denver, I looked at like a little like cruddy house that was like whatever they wanted like almost $450K for like this little like clunker of a house.
It's nuts. Like, we were just out there, like, we live in Kentucky, so I mean, like, the housing market's pretty decent here. It's not terrible, but like we're just like Googling, stuff like how much is this house? And it's nuts. It really is. But I know like New Jersey, New York, not, are you all close to New York?
We're like an hour and a half away from the city.
So that's pretty close. Like, I mean, so it's like prices can be kind of crazy up there.
What did she like about New Jersey where she's like, all right, I'm gonna come out there with you? Was there anything in particular, or she's just like, let's get out of Denver?
I think there's a few things. I think one, she was kind of just ready to get out of Denver. And her job is remote, so she still works for Denver, like in Denver technically, which is really nice, but she lives here. And so that made it really easy for her to be able to be like, you know what, let's just go out there. Let's see how it goes. But I think she really likes being like on the beach and on the water because we're very, very close to the water.
Oh,
Like
nice.
if you walk down my street all the way to the end, you're at the bay.
Nice.
So I think she really likes that a lot. And, you know, the area I live in New Jersey, it's like a very small town feel. And so it's just like very, very different from, you know, where we were at in Denver. Because Denver's so busy and so many people are moving there too. So it's like, it's almost overwhelming sometimes in Denver, and here it's a lot more chill, especially in the area we're at. So I think that's definitely what I liked about it too.
Yeah. I remember when I came up to New Jersey, like you know, again, like there's like stereotypes of like every state, right? Like, you know, what
about the bros? Like,
yeah, you know, it's like we think about it, but I remember going up to New Jersey for the ADCC trials to compete. And then a friend of mine, he lives in New Jersey, and I'd go there to see him. And I remember going, I'm like, oh, this place is pretty nice. Like it's not at all like what I was thinking of New Jersey. It's like when people think of Kentucky, they think of us as like, you know, people not wearing shoes, no teeth, like that kind of stuff with like, you know, but it's obviously there's places like that. There's stereotypes come from someplace, but I was like, New Jersey is actually a nice place. Like this is like super, like you said, kind of almost like in the places that I was at. It was like being in a little small town, but then like you said, you go about an hour up and then you're in these giant cities. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and that's one thing I really like about Jersey actually is like I love the convenience of being able to be like so close to New York, you know, 'cause so much happens in New York. And like you know, anytime there's anything cool going on up there, if I want to, I can just take a quick day trip to the city and come back at night. You know, I'm also like only an hour and a half away from Philly, and I'm so close to, you know, Connecticut and Maine and Baltimore, and I'm just in like this little hot spot to where I can just go somewhere for a day or two and come back, and it's in driving distance, you know, so that's so nice.
I think one thing, you know, I'm a dad, and so I have, you know, I got a daughter and a son, and like part of the thing is like she probably wanted to be closer to you. Like you may not think about it, but like your mom probably, you know, you don't, that distance is kind of hard, you know. It's like your kids start, my kids are very small still, but like I think it's part of it. Like, I mean, you can like, and also you want to support your kids. Like you want them, like if you have this dream, this potential, you want to try to, even though it's unconventional, right? Like maybe your mom was like, what are you doing? Like you're supposed to go to college, right? You're supposed to do this stuff, but like you want to support your kids. And if you see them like striving and putting the effort in, which is hard, you know, like you're going to the gym every single day. When you're not at the gym, you're doing recovery work or you're strength training, doing stuff like that. I think it's like you want to support your kids. And I think it's one of the, you know, taking so much of the emphasis of like, you know, normal day-to-day stuff out of your stress, you know, I think is really helpful. Like when I went to grad school and like I moved back home, and it was so much more easy for me to focus on like going to school. I didn't have to worry about like getting food and doing all this stuff. So it really helped me immensely. So I think like it allows you to really focus on what's really important to you now. And plus your mom gets to be closer to you, I think is probably part of her deal too. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
And it is really nice because the way, you know, my parents were always incredibly supportive. And I think that's, you know, one aspect of my life where I really lucked out is my parents were actually like, don't go to college right now. My parents were kind of against me going to college.
That's awesome.
They were like, we want you to do, you know, what you want to do. We want you to be happy. We want you to, you know, if jiu-jitsu is what you really want, we want you to go for it. And I think too, like, since I've been so committed to training for so long, like, you know, throughout, you know, basically throughout my whole life, I would never really miss training for anything. You know, I'd be doing 16, 17 classes a week sometimes. And I think, you know, that really made my parents also be able to look at me and be like, you know, she's been committed to this for a long time. Like clearly she wants it and we need to support her in that. And I think, you know, it makes it so much easier when you have just a good support system behind you that, you know, believes in you.
For sure. And being able to show that dedication at such a young age, you know, that's not typical, you know, like we all know, like, I mean, like most young kids, like they don't find something that they're like obsessed with, and especially something that's like super physically demanding. You know, like it's like most of the time I feel like, you know, the joke or the sort of the thing going on with kids is like trying to drag them away from a tablet or a computer game or whatever it might be to get them to go do something physical. So to have a young kid say, no, I gotta train, they could probably see that something's going on there, you know? And like you said, having that support system is important because you know as well as I do, and obviously you're seeing it more and more as you come across more fighters and competitors. For every like one competitor that's out there, They have like a gym full of people behind them that they train with. They have their coaches. They have their people that are supporting them monetarily. There's this whole group of people that puts that one person out there. So as many people as you can get in your corner, it's the more the better.
Absolutely. And it's like, you know, it's very powerful knowing you have so many people behind you too. Like, and sometimes it's just like that little boost that you need when you're feeling like, you know, unmotivated. Like, you know, you're not going to feel motivated all the time, but you need to be disciplined. And, you know, sometimes like when you're feeling unmotivated and, you know, you need to be disciplined, you know, you go to the gym and you think about like, you know, I'm doing this for me, but I'm doing this for all the people too that, you know, helped me get here. You know, like this isn't just for me, you know, it's for Tom, it's for my team. And, you know, I'm not going to let anybody down, you know, and I'm going to do everything in my power to not let that happen. And so I think that's a very strong thing to have, is a good support system.
Yeah, a lot of people put that, you know, they put energy into you, you know, essentially. Like I mean, you don't really, it's not about like disappointing or not disappointing them. It's just about kind of, and that's one thing. I think sometimes the hardest thing is getting to the gym sometimes, like getting there. Once you're there, you're like, all right, we're going to do this thing. We're going to train. We're going to, you know, you're already there. I think the hardest thing is getting there. Is there someone, or is there something that you like to maybe you have a student that's having a hard time being consistent, or you see some difficulty with consistency?
Cat? Is that your cat?
Yeah, we get attacked by cats every episode.
Yeah, this is my cat. This is Luva.
Lufa? Oh, nice. That's cool. What? How old?
She's 3.
3. Okay. Me and my wife, we have 2 cats at the house. And it's so funny. Like one of them was supposed to be our barn cat. Like she was supposed to stay at the barn with the horse. And then instead of that, like she came out and she was like sitting at the door, like meow, like let her in, chew. Yeah. So now she's not much of a barn cat.
I'm scared of cats. I feel like they're always out to get me.
You're scared of cats?
Dude, I don't trust cats. I have 2 dogs. And I don't cat. I'm like, this cat's gonna try to kill me in my sleep or something. Scratch my eyeballs out. I don't know. They're always up to something. Look at their little eyes. They're like,
well, no, they are up to something.
They're up to something. They're like little sneaky little.
They're just curious.
I know. But I'm just saying that's my thing. I'm sticking to it. I got like a fat French bulldog, and he's harmless, you know. So like, he's not up to anything. He's just sleeping in the corner the whole time. I know what he's up to.
Does your cat do anything weird? Like, does it do anything like strange?
Sometimes, yeah. She'll we have the shower doors that are like sliding glass doors. And she'll sometimes just like sit there and scratch at the door. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what? Why are you doing that? She likes to do this stuff, and she'll like break the blinds. And so we have like missing pieces of blinds everywhere. Oh, yeah. We'll have like 4 or 5 in a row, just of little like areas where she'll go in and out of the blinds. Like, she's funny. do
they like, so
I have a theory about cats and humans, by the way, because humans and the cats are very similar. Like there's one particular trait where humans and cats are almost identical. So like if I go use the restroom, or if I go into a room and I close the door, the cat will, like, you can hear him patting, like, hey, I want to come in. So if I let the cat in and I close the door, then he wants back out. And humans are like the same way. Like humans, like I want to be over. I want what they have. I want to be over there with them. And when they get over, no, I want what they have now, right? Like it's
telling you, well, devil children they are. So enough cat talk. It's not a cat podcast. We should start a cat podcast. Cat. What's a good cat podcast name?
I don't know, bro.
Cat time. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know what I was talking about. So I was asking, as far as like getting to the gym, if you see like maybe a student or a training partner is having some difficulty with consistency or showing up, is there something you like to tell them? Is there something you kind of, you know, any conversation, any words of advice that you like to give them to build that consistency?
I feel like one thing that does make our gym really special is that a lot of us, we show up even when we don't want to. We're all very consistent on that end. So that's not something I really do have to worry about. But, you know, if I do see somebody start to slack, I definitely always reach out and I'm like, hey, just, you know, what's going on? You know, we miss you at the gym. And I just try to tell them to get in here. I don't have like too much that's set, but, you know, I do check in on people and I do try to make sure everybody like knows that they're wanted at the gym. And, you know, I think that's the biggest thing. If they know that they're wanted, they're going to want to come back.
Well, for sure. Being acknowledged is important, because a lot of times, you know, most people in a day-to-day existence, it's like we're almost kind of, like, you know, nobody, there's no acknowledgement. You go around the street and stuff, like nobody like knows who you are or whatever. So you have this place where people are saying, hey, where are you? We want you back at the gym, Bob, or whatever. That's just be that acknowledgement a lot of times can be super important, because I'll reach out to students and do the same thing if I haven't seen them in a while or whatever, and then they'll like, I've even had them tell me that exactly thing. Or it's not that you had to say a bunch of stuff, it was just the fact that you said something that, you know, got me to come back in.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you. So in jiu-jitsu, there is this weird, like, it's a bit of a paradox. So we a lot of times in jiu-jitsu we'll say like, lose your ego, get rid of your ego, that kind of stuff, which I know where they're getting at, but the idea of the ego is like, it's who we are, right? It's like our self-construction. And as a competitor, you got to have a pretty healthy ego. You have to have a certain sense of self that, like, especially as the more and more stiffer the competition goes, you can't walk out there in the competition and go, oh, gee golly, I hope I do okay today, right? Like, I mean, it's a lot of times you have to know that you're a badass that can do this stuff. But a lot of times, at least I found that is a lot of times easier after you've accomplished certain things, like that you have your confidence can be built under a firm foundation. For you as a competitor, have you had a moment where you won a competition, you won a match, and that maybe you exceeded what you thought was possible for yourself? You're like maybe, like, for instance, with me, I've gone into tournaments that I didn't think I was going to win or even do well in. And then I was like, oh, snaps. Like, I freaking killed it today. Or even had competitors that I was, you know, I'm going to go after them. I'm really going to go after them. But in the back of my head, I'm like, probably won't win this, but I'm still going to attack them with everything I've got. And then I come out on top, and then, like, afterwards, you're like, oh, like that was different. Have you ever had a situation like that in your competition where you maybe exceeded what you thought was possible for yourself?
You know, I don't think I have, actually. I think I do have a very good balance of, like, oh, I'm the best and I'm going to win. And just knowing that and having, like, that self-belief, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, I feel like I have a really good balance of, like, self-belief and also being humble. You know, in the training room, I'm more so humble. Like, I hate to lose even in training. I don't like it, but you know, I know that I need it. And I know that when I do not do well, or that people, you know, get the better of me sometimes, I know that that was what I needed. And I know that I'm able to use that and kind of translate that into competitions. And I feel like the more you do get your ass beat in the training room, the better you're going to do in competition, because you're used to that uncomfort. And I think the more uncomfortable you are in training, the better off you're going to be under the bright lights. And so I think, you know, going into competitions, I do always feel really good and I do feel really confident. Just because I do know that I suffer in the training room, and I do know I have people to push me that, you know, have good technique. And I'm just always very, very confident going into things, but not too confident to where I get cocky. And I think that's where things can get dangerous, is if you get too cocky.
Do you have like a pre-competition ritual or something you do, a mantra, anything you like to do before you compete to like get yourself ready, get yourself kind of like in the right headspace, or just your body kind of ready to go?
Day of competitions, I like to just keep things like as chill and as normal as possible. I try to not think about the competition until it's there, you know, and I'm in that moment. I feel like if you hype up a competition too much in your head, it starts to get the best of you. It starts to get in your head. And that's when you start to be like, oh, well, maybe I'm not as good as this person, or maybe, you know, maybe I'm not going to do well, or, you know, you start to have those self-doubts creep in, but it's just your mind creating monsters of men, you know, like everybody's having those same thoughts. Everybody's nervous. Everybody's, you know, feeling uncomfortable. And so if you can kind of just keep your brain free of even thinking about the competition, you're going to avoid a lot of those thoughts that build up and eventually do turn into negative thoughts. And so, you know, when the time comes and it is time to, you know, time to compete, I start to get in my zone a little bit. I put my headphones in. I try to just not talk to anyone. I try to just get focused. I try to get very in the moment. Because I feel like if you can stay in the moment, you're going to do a lot better and you're going to perform a lot better. If your brain is elsewhere and you're thinking about, you know, other things right before a competition and during the match, you're not going to compete as well, because one little mistake and that's it. You know what I mean? Like your opponent could easily capitalize on that. So I try to just be as in the moment as possible when I compete, and, you know, leading up to it, keeping everything as normal as possible.
So kind of leading into competitions, are you excited for the Polaris show?
I am incredibly excited about Polaris. I am so honored that they asked me to be a part of such an amazing bracket. You know, these girls are all world class, you know, multiple time world champions, ADCC champions, PANS champions. You know, I'm just honored to be amongst this group of girls. I think it's so cool.
How did that come about? Did they reach out to you? Did they reach out to Tom? How did that come about?
Yeah, they reached out to Tom after the Worlds. You know, Roy saw my performance at the Worlds and was like, wow, you know, I think she could do really well in this bracket. And so they invited me to be a part of it. And, you know, they were very impressed with my match against Rosa Walsh at the Worlds, because she's been killing it lately. And so they were like, I think she could do really well. And so we accepted it, and that was that.
I know you're probably just excited to compete and go. You've ever been to the UK before?
I have not. So I'm super excited. And, you know, London is like a bucket list place for me. So the fact that it's, you know, there, or, you know, I fly into there at least, is like really, really exciting.
Yeah. Is there anyone that you saw in the bracket and you're like, oh my gosh, that would be like, maybe that's someone that you look up to, or someone you'd be really excited? I mean, I don't think the brackets are out yet, right? They're just I don't think the brackets are out, but it's like, is it eight women under 66 kilogram? Yeah.
Yeah. So, 66 kilograms and 8 women.
Yeah. So like, is there anyone that you know that's in the bracket that you'd be like, that would be really cool to compete against them, or just kind of show my skill against?
Yeah, I think honestly everybody in that bracket. I wouldn't complain at any of the first round matchups, to be quite honest. You know, right now the girls they've released everybody except who wins their qualifier, which is going to be the 8th girl. But the bracket is, you know, me, Fionn, Elizabeth Clay,
Amy Campo's in it,
Giovanna Jara, Brice DeMarie.
Yes.
And
no slouches.
I mean, you're just talking about like you said, world class ADCC quality women.
Yes.
Battling
like everybody in that division was in ADCC, you know what I mean? So to be in that bracket with any of those girls is like very, very cool. But I think the person that when I saw she was in the bracket, that I was like kind of taken back about was Fionn. I've been watching Fionn forever, and she's somebody that I've always admired, and I've always admired her jiu-jitsu. And so to be in the bracket with Fionn to me was like very surreal. I was like, oh my God, like I'm no longer like looking up to her and like admiring her match. Like I have to be that person competing against her. And that to me was like such a surreal feeling. And it's still surreal. Like I look at the bracket and I'm like, wow, like I'm in the mix with these girls, and like these girls that I've watched and seen compete. And now I'm like, I get to compete against them and like be on the same stage and on the same mat. And, you know, I get to feel their strength and feel their technique. And I'm just so excited to be able to test myself against these girls that, you know, have been killing it at the top levels forever. And that are also killing it currently. So.
Yeah, they're all like up and comers, or they're already in their prime, or even not even in their prime yet, but they're still winning. Like Amy Campo's super young, and Fionn's in her 20. I mean, everybody's really young, and like it's just, and the level of women's jiu-jitsu is incredibly, like it is like accelerated so much, which is really cool to see. You know, a lot of like my wife is like, you know, in her 30s, and she's kind of seen me do jiu-jitsu for a while. Like I've been doing it for 14, 15 years, and she's kind of getting into it finally. And like, you know, I think it's very cool to see that, and like how it's become more like available, more welcoming, and just like a better experience. And you see like the women start to like really, like skill levels are starting to kind of like develop really, really fast, which is cool to see.
Absolutely. It's been really cool to kind of see the growth and the progression of women's jiu-jitsu, because, you know, I feel like even 2 or 3 years ago, it was not at the, you know, at the level that it is now. And it wasn't as watched as it is now, I feel like. And Now, you look at some of these cards, and some of the best matchups on the card are the women's matches. And so it's really cool to be able to see like the women's jiu-jitsu progress. And I think we're going to see a lot more progress over the next few years. And I'm really excited to be a part of that like group that's, able to help the sport grow.
For sure. And does that feel for you as a person that's put a lot of work into this, that's been, you've taken a lot of chances to basically put all your eggs in that basket? Does it feel, I mean, again, and it's just, you're still very like early in your career, of course, but does it feel a bit validating that you're like, okay, like there's my name next to all their names?
Yes, absolutely. It's one of those things that's like, you do work hard for so long, and you have this dream of like seeing your name, like, in the mix with these girls, and like, and you have this dream about being like under the bright lights with these girls. And so to finally get there, it's like, wow, like my hard work is paying off. And, everything that I've been working towards for these last 10 years is, starting to come to fruition. And that's like one of the best feelings in the world. And it was really similar to like, seeing my name get put in the top 10 rankings on Flow Grappling. It was like, wow, like I'm finally like seeing myself grow, and I'm seeing people start to know my name more and more. And I think that's like one of the best feelings ever.
Yeah, it's like the recognition and also the validation that comes with it, I think, is like it solidifies. I think you still like are trying to prove yourself, right? Because you're like with all these women that have actually already accomplished some of these world titles, and you're just on your way up. So you're like the young, hungry competitor now, and like you're trying to take some of what they have, which is I guess, like, I don't know if I could think about your situation, be like, I mean, you really have nothing to lose, right? You just go out there and play your game, and whatever happens. I think it's a good place to be.
Exactly. Like there's no real pressure, and it's just like I get to go do my thing and have fun and enjoy the moment, and really enjoy like one of my first big major competitions with like, the top ranked girls. And it's just such an honor to be put in this bracket.
And what's the rule set? Do you know like the time? Like it's single elimination, correct? And yeah, what's the time? Is there like, I mean, obviously there's no points, or is there points?
There are points. It's a 10-minute match, but every position and stuff is all worth 1 point. So, back control is only worth 1 point.
Okay.
That's interesting. 1 point.
Huh.
Yeah.
Huh. What do you think about that rule set?
I'm excited. I think it's cool that everything's worth 1 point, because, let's say I do get my back taken, I'm not out of it yet,
right.
Like, I think it gives a really like, it makes things a little bit more competitive, which I think is really cool. Like it kind of eliminates that idea of stalling too much, I think, because, you're going to be holding on for dear life if you get that back control, and somebody else is going to be doing everything they can to escape it. And so I feel like you're not really going to have a boring match. I think everything is going to be, I think it's going to be very fast paced, and I think the whole card is going to be very, very exciting.
Yeah, that's the tricky part for like competitions. Like there's so many different rule sets in jiu-jitsu, and I think all of them are all trying to get at like, what can we do to make this as exciting as possible for the people watching it? And with points, I know a lot of points tournaments get ragged on for being, quote, like boring for stallers, but ultimately that comes down to the competitors, not the point systems. But 1 point per, that's interesting, because there's like, back mount, a lot of times, like you said, if you get your back taken in a normal competition, it's 4 points. It's hard to make that up.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
Especially if you lose that in the first 2 minutes of the match, like then you're like, oh my gosh, like
right. And the person can, then they can just cruise and just ride that out.
Yeah.
So sort of unrelated, you said it's the UK was on your bucket list. Or do you have anything that you're going to try to see while you're out there? Like anything in particular, like that you want to visit or see?
So I'm a really big Harry Potter fan.
Okay. There you go. Very cool. I've read all the books too, so I'm with you.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And there's like the Warner Bros. Studio tours out there, and they have like, a ton of the costumes and the original sets and like stuff like that. And so I really want to go there. That's like one thing that's definitely like a must for me. And I think any of the touristy stuff would be cool, like Buckingham Palace and like Big Ben and like that type of stuff. But yeah, I think the Harry Potter thing is kind of my, my main thing.
I'm reading those with my son who's like 7. We're reading those.
So let's see.
Yeah.
So you were born in what, 2002,
2001.
2001.
That's crazy.
It's like, so you were like a kid when the last one came out.
Yeah. And I remember like going to the movies and like seeing some of them in the movie theater and just being like, wow.
That's so wild. It's just so, yeah, you've trained jiu-jitsu for like half your life or martial arts for half your life. That's wild. And like, you know, it just starting, it's so interesting to see how early now the norm, like my kids are 5 and 7. Like I said, they're kind of doing jiu-jitsu kind of recreationally, nothing serious, just kind of get them out there. And it's just so interesting to see, like, you know, even as a young person, like how quickly you would integrate those techniques and how quick you learn. And like, I mean, I've rolled with some little kids and like little spider monkeys, you know, and they're just so good. And like, they're so athletic and so limber, and they can just kind of get to all these, it's just very cool to see. And I think that's probably part of the, you know, evolution of jiu-jitsu as well. Like how these techniques keep evolving because people are getting more creative and, but it's cool. Yeah. I think it's interesting just to see, like, you know, someone at such a high level already at 21, you know what I mean? That's very cool to see.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, this like next generation of kids that are up and coming right now, that are, you know, training, they're going to be monsters. You know what I mean? Like we have a couple kids on the mat that are like 12, 11, 13. And like these kids, by the time they're 16, 17, are going to be giving the adults a run for their money or killing the adults because they're just, you know, they're training in the same classes. They're getting that same technique and their brains are like sponges. You know what I mean? Yep. So like, we have a few kids that in a few years are going to be forces. And I just love watching that with the kids.
Well, and it's interesting too, because like when you were a kid, you can contrast that now as an adult because things change. But like I remember I got into wrestling as a young teenager. I remember, like, you know, it was kind of the time before I was really interested in girls. There's no like responsibility, like, you know, so I've got a body that basically re-heals itself every day. So you have like, you've got so much bandwidth to just give to this one thing. Mm-hmm. And then like, you don't have as many distractions. I feel like, I mean, you do, there are games and silly stuff, but if you're really into it, I feel like there's less distractions when you're younger and you don't have any responsibilities and you can just dive into it everything. Whereas, you know, if like even like when you had the apartment for a little bit, now you have this responsibility, and no matter what, any little responsibility that you add onto your plate takes away from your training and from your focus on what you're doing.
Absolutely. And that was something too that, you know, when I was a kid, I had, you know, no real outside responsibility other than like, you know, school. And so when I was in karate, I would go to the karate school like right after school, and I'd be there until like 8:30 at night, and I would just take every class that I could, and in between I would do homework or hang out with my friends. And like, you know, that was one thing that made it really easy from such an early age to be able to dedicate like all my time to this, and being able to dedicate, you know, everything I have into it. And I love that I was able to do that from such an early age. And I love that I was able to continue that discipline now and able to translate that discipline into, you know, other aspects of my life as well.
Very cool. So Jaidyn, if anybody wants to get a hold of you for, you know, to contact you for any reason, learn
or
from
follow
you,
along with you.
Yep. Yeah. Where can they do that?
You can follow me on my Instagram. It's Jaidyn_Mueller.
Awesome. And we'll put that in the show notes. And then your next comp is going to be at Polaris 23, March 11th.
Yep.
And that's Fight Pass, correct? It's gonna be on Fight Pass?
Yes.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you for taking the time.
And thank you guys for having me. Yeah. Thank you.
Good luck to you. Yeah, good luck on your career and good luck on your next competition.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. All right, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed that podcast. Hopefully you were entertained. Hopefully maybe you got something from it. If you're a young competitor, maybe give you some ideas to chew on for your upcoming dreams of, you know, reaching something in jiu-jitsu, right? Like maybe you have dreams of competing, maybe you have dreams of getting paid to do jiu-jitsu or going to some big competition, right? Maybe you're a woman who's like training and you're thinking about doing the same thing. Hopefully it's useful to you. I think that it's useful to hear from people's stories about where they're at, where they're going, and how they got there, and you know, how they perceive things. This is one of the reasons why I like reading like autobiographies and biographies and things like that. You know, like I was like saying, like the fact that she got paid to do it early on, that really, it changes your brain chemistry. It just does something where it breaks the seal that you realize, oh, I can do this. you know, and then you realize there's a possibility there. And from most of the stuff that I've studied, where you see these people who go on to these really cool things through, you know, that they get paid to develop these different passions of theirs or come up with these different projects. At some point, there seems to be this, like I said, I've seen this thing where this incident happens where it's like they get paid to do it. And then it's like all of a sudden it changes. And
Unlock something.
Yeah. I mean, like it's like we can get paid money to do this. I mean, whether it's Walt Disney, Steve Jobs, all of them.
Yeah.
You know? So
and it was cool having Jaidyn on, just because, like, you know, we've had a lot of these guests, a lot of guests that have kind of been there, done that. Maybe like we had Nick Grigoriadis talks about the seasons, you know, of jiu-jitsu, and like she's like in the summer.
She's getting into that early summer.
She's just getting started, and like, so a good question that, you know, I thought, like, well, what's a great perspective for being a young person getting into jiu-jitsu? What are some things to think about, like to focus on? And then also for parents of that have kids in jiu-jitsu, you know, some of y'all might be listening to the podcast. It's a great way to give you some ideas on how to support and encourage your kids to kind of just, you know, enjoy jiu-jitsu for right now. You don't have to be a competitor, but like just to, because I think it's just like, it's a life skill in a lot of ways. That's why I encourage my kids to do it, because I think it's something very important for your confidence, and having the ability to defend yourself, I think is invaluable. So for me as a parent, you know, my kids are in jiu-jitsu and I want them to do it because I feel like it's something I want them to have. It's a skill I think you can take with you anywhere, anytime. And I think it's something that's always valuable to have.
Right. I mean, because it's like, I was reading something and they were talking about how like archery is not necessary for daily life anymore. Right.
None. Yep.
But the skills that you use to develop archery, like focus, like being patient, all those things, it's like the same stuff in martial arts, right? Like we don't need martial arts to survive necessarily. I mean, maybe one day you use it and you have to, you know, protect yourself, but for the most part, you don't need it. But the idea of being, you know, like having tenacity and sticking with something, you know, dealing with uncomfortable situations, embracing challenges as opportunities to get better, like she talked about on the podcast, right? Like it's not a bad thing to get my butt kicked, right? Like all these different things, those things lend themselves to being off the mat and responding to life accordingly in an effective way. And so again, martial arts can be a super powerful way to empower people. Yeah. And so with that said, guys, hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. Again, as always, thanks to our sponsors for helping make the podcast happen, so that we can come to your ears every week on Monday. Every week at the time of recording this, every week. Because who knows, it could be in the future and it could be different. As always, Charlotte's Web, you can check them out at charlottesweb.com. Again, CBD company, makes great CBD products, top notch. They go through a rigorous amount of testing to make sure that what is delivered to you is what says on the bottle. So a lot of CBD companies are giving you that bathtub CBD. And I say that based on absolutely no, deep insight. I'm just saying that they did do a study where a good deal of the CBD products out there were mislabeled. So because it's unregulated, people can kind of get away with doing stuff. And so there was a lot of stuff that was inside the labels that wasn't listed, or there was stuff that was on the label that wasn't listed correctly in the dosages and stuff like that. So again, Charlotte's Web does they do a good job of being very stringent with their product. And again, if you want to check out any of their stuff, you can go to charlottesweb.com and use the promo code JiuJitsu or JiuJitsu20 for 20% off the order. Also, you can go to epicrollbjj.com if you're looking to get a new rash guard, maybe a new jiu-jitsu shirt, some shorts, some grappling shorts, sweatshirts, hoodies. Yep. Basically, Matt makes anything jiu-jitsu related. If you kind of just want to check it out, it's worth just kind of browsing, right? Just kind of go through there. You know, we don't have physical stores anymore as much as we used to, right? You can go browse online and just, go through it. But he does make some really cool stuff, and I like the products that he puts out. A lot of you guys that send me messages in DMs on Instagram will tell me, oh man, I really love the Ghee. I love this gear. I love this rash guard that I got from Matt, or I love the hoodie or whatever. You get the products and you're stoked about them, which I'm happy about. Because again, it's one of the big things. I wouldn't want you guys. I've actually got to figure out what to do, because there was a company a couple of years ago that we worked out a little thing and they sent me some cool products, and I I did something in one of the videos and they screwed over a couple people where people ordered and they didn't send them the product.
Oh, wow.
It was for those little like the band thingies.
Yeah.
So I was using them. I was like, okay, cool. I'll just talk about this one in the video. And they've kind of screwed some people over. So I've got to figure out if I can get my video editor to remove that. Like just remove that little part out of there.
I think you can actually. Yeah.
So because I'm like, man, I don't want people to get screwed over. And so that's the thing, like with Matt's stuff, I'm glad that like when you guys send me the DMs, like you're pumped about it. Cause again, I like the fact that you're getting stuff and you're happy about it. You're excited. And so again, if you guys want any of the gear that Matt puts out, check them out at epicrollbjj.com. Promo code is JiuJitsu for 15% off. And again, that supports the podcast. We appreciate it. And that's that. Also, if you guys want to check out some premier men's grooming products, everything from colognes, from soaps, from balms, you got beard trimmers now. You have trimmers that they say they're for groin trimmers, like the groin groomers, the lawnmower, which you can definitely use it for that. It's actually really good. It's always funny, like it's something we're kind of stuffy about, like our bodily functions and our private areas. You know, that wasn't always that way.
Well, yeah, we didn't have to wear clothes back then.
No. So check us out. Random history fact for you guys. I gave you guys a history fact before. So check this out. So I was reading a really cool book called 9 Nasty Words. I believe it's the title of it, by a guy named John McWhorter. Yeah, and he's a linguist, I think at Columbia, and so he's a studies language
wordsmith.
Well, he's probably not a linguist. He's probably something else. There's probably a better word for it, but he's a study. He is a expert in language, right? And so he looks at language. So the book is actually talking about like the way that our words, our cuss words and stuff changed over periods of time. So I thought this was really interesting. So at one point, our cuss words, the really bad ones, like, you know how like now, like, oh, go to hell. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like, it's not even like, if like some guy got really angry, you said, go to hell. You would be like, whatever, dude, you know, that kind of stuff. Nobody cares. It doesn't carry that much weight. Well, it's funny because at one point, like go to hell and damnation, those were the bad ones.
Really?
Yeah. Because like our society was super religious. And so saying like, go to hell, like, oh my God. I mean, like this is the time where the popes would excommunicate a country or a nation or whatever. And like, I mean, people would revolt. They're like, you better get together with the Pope because we don't all want to go to hell. Right. So this is a big deal. And then what happened is if I'm recalling this correct, when we got into into like the industrial age and stuff like that, where, you know, there was more to go around, people had homes with rooms and stuff. Basically, because here's the idea. At one point, like if we were in a family, we would have just shared there would have been a house, if you want to call it that, but it would just been like a big room. Right. And so we would have slept in the same bed. Like we would have been making babies right next to each other. Like it just would have been whatever. There was no space. How are you going to get away from each other? Right. So like there's no space. And so like he was even saying in some cases, in some cultures or some societies, like you'd be hanging out with friends. Your friends would be over like making out and like making babies. And you'd be like, oh, look, they love each other. That's great. Not a big, just like whatever. Huh. But then as we got rooms, right? And then all of a sudden we became confined. We became very stuffy about our, you know, like what we do, you know, by ourselves now. Uh-huh. So like, that's when the language essentially shifted as well, where we got into like using like the, you know, shit and fucking damn. Those became the bad ones because now we're hiding those away. So those became taboo, as like it became taboo to be openly whatever with people, right? Because we had space. So I thought it was very interesting.
It is.
Now, with that said, as I was saying, at first when we got the lawnmower, when Manscaped sent us some stuff, their whole thing was groin grooming. And I remember I was really stuffy about it. I'm like, I don't really want to talk about grooming, but then I used the product and I was like, damn, they got me. It's a good product.
Yeah, it's good.
So, I mean, again, it's like one of those things where if you're a man and you like staying well groomed, I know my wife, like she likes me to be a little bit more manscaped, right? Like she does. So yeah. That said, if you're a man and you have a wife or a significant other that likes you being trimmed up a little bit, whether that's on your face or other places, well, then check them out. Manscaped.com. Promo code is JiuJitsu20 for 20% off the order, and you get free shipping. It's a great deal. And again, it also makes a great gift if you want to take care of your man, get him something. It's a surprisingly good set of products. You know, again, I know there's a lot of marketing behind it and they put out stuff, but it's good products. And last, guys, if you guys want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu Jitsu podcast. And again, you get 2 free bonuses. One of those bonuses upon sign up will give you access to a seminar that I did, Ghee and Nogi seminar. And the other one is a 20-minute sort of mobility flexibility routine where Eugene goes into helping you stretch certain muscles, as well as loosen up strengthening certain areas like in your hips, to help sort of balance out certain parts of your body that could be messed up from jiu-jitsu. It's very common. And so again, check it out at the website. Again, patreon.com/the-jiu-jitsu-podcast. And at last, guys, if you want to join my email newsletter and get my daily email that I send out, you can go to chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN. And when you do that, you can get 3 free ebooks on jiu-jitsu. One is on your game plan guide, how to develop your own jiu-jitsu game. One is on, I call it focused jiu-jitsu, which is about breaking plateaus with specific types of drilling. And with that drilling, you don't actually need a partner necessarily who's drilling with you. There's active drilling sessions that you can do with just your rolling partners, and they don't even have to be aware of it. You can be drilling and they don't even know it. And then the last one is on doing at-home studying and workouts and things like that related to jiu-jitsu. And I created that one during the lockdowns and the quarantine for people. Again, as I related to you guys earlier, that little package will be going away in the next few months. And so if you guys want to get any of those ebooks, make sure you get them soon, because I'll be taking them away and doing some different stuff with them in my website. So anyway, guys, that's the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us here. Again, check out Jaidyn. I'm sure you'll probably see more of her in the near future as she continues to improve and grow in jiu-jitsu. And guys, we'll talk to you next time.